So welcome everybody. I'm so excited to get started. It has been an absolute joy for me to see folks who are on the call, ranging from grad school classmates to people I haven't spoken with in a long time, to my mom. So really excited to get going with y'all. So here we go. So quickly, the agenda we're going to go through together. We're going to do an introduction. We're going to talk about the importance of connection. Probably not something I have to sell super hard to the people who are already in this virtual room with us, but we'll do a quick review of what research says connection can do for people, both physically, emotionally, psychologically, all kinds of stuff. And then we're going to take a little tour through some research-based suggestions for connection that I've specifically made for virtual meetings. Hope to have a chance for you all to process, to think about ways that you can use these things. We'll do a closing, and that should be about 30 minutes. I've probably packed about 45 minutes of content into it, so we'll see how we do. Because I also don't want to make this feel rushed, because there's just no need to feel rushed right now. We have all kinds of stuff going on. But we'll do an optional Q&A at the end for 15 minutes. So this introduction, as you can see, I'm naming what your role will be. So this one is just going to be me talking at you for a second, and then you'll be hopping into the chat box. So who am I? My name is Sydney Kastner. People call me all kinds of different things. I go by Sid, Squid, Sid, really whatever folks feel like calling me, which I appreciate a nickname. The pronouns I use are she, her, hers. My professional role right now, I'm the Director of Wellbeing and Growth at a nonprofit called 4.0 Schools, where we work with folks across the country who are passionate about changing what education looks like, specifically for increasing equity within their communities. I love dogs. I'm currently fostering a dog that I hope to adopt. She's a cute little chocolate lab. I love psychology. I love talking about psychology. I love smiling. I love talking about smiling. And I really like drinks that have jalapenos in them. So I also am here because of the wonderful alumni association of a program that I recently graduated from called the Masters in Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania. The most succinct way I've heard folks talk about positive psychology is the study of what makes life worth living. So if you think about an analogy of just the range of human emotions, from negative emotions or experiences or mental health pathologies to positive, what positive psychology really focuses on is that neutral to the positive. Ooh, maybe it's this way, who knows what direction I'm looking to you. And working within that neutral to positive doesn't mean that positive psychology isn't helpful for everyone. It can also be a great way to learn how to buffer against certain things that happen, specifically anxiety and depression. Happy to talk about that with anyone later also. So just a little opening the hood, as we say at my workplace, give you a little bit, you're gonna see this throughout, just a little bit of reasoning why I'm doing certain things. So one of the 6 suggestions or categories of suggestions that I'm gonna give you tonight is being playful. So you'll see some fun little GIFs throughout because playfulness, as we'll talk about soon, has a lot of really wonderful benefits to both the workplace and also to connection. Other thing you notice, nicknames. I told you things that people call me because that helps you feel closer to me and because it helps me feel closer to you. I love getting to say the nicknames that people call me and then see in the chat box people's chosen nicknames for me. What a delight. It also encourages playfulness as well. And then finally, gave you my social media handle, Wellbeing with Sid. It's this new thing that I've started, and it honestly would help me out if you check it out and if things feel helpful to you and if you give me feedback. So that's also the number 2 suggestion or category of suggestions, which is giving people an opportunity to help one another, can help them feel connected. So your turn. So what I'm gonna have you share is just in the chat box. We're gonna take 1 whole minute, to give your name, your pronouns, and why you're excited about learning more about connecting virtually. So what we'll do is we'll take 1 minute, and during that minute, I'm just gonna elevate some of the things that people are talking about, just so we can continue to connect with one another. So great, see Becca is here. She wants to connect more with kids and adults that she's working with. That's awesome. These suggestions definitely aren't just for adults. Also love that shout out to the things that you're watching or the content you're enjoying. Danielle, refreshing connection with colleagues and working from home. Oh my goodness, Good morning from Australia. That is so cool. Thank you so much for joining us in the future. That's really exciting. A couple other people that are here, assistant principals, definitely this can be useful for supporting teachers, helping them feel connected to one another. You could also share it with teachers to use with kids. Lindsay, yeah, people struggling with the situation, want to learn some practices to support them virtually. Awesome. And we will compile the things people are listening and watching so that we can share that out if anyone needs any suggestions for just other ways to occupy your time. Welcome Maggie and Lucy, working in education in New Orleans, in Boston. Elizabeth at a wonderful boarding school. Wonderful. GIFs, absolutely. Laughter is so important. Definitely carry that with you because you'll be seeing a lot of GIFs. Sydney Batson, welcome. Yeah, moving in-person classes online, not an easy feat. Awesome. So I'm going to let you keep introducing yourself in this chat box. It's so good to see so many familiar names and new friends. So feel free to continue to introduce yourselves there, and we're going to keep popping to the next thing. So one thing I want to name is we are currently in a Zoom webinar. We are not in a Zoom meeting, and they both have really wonderful benefits. You can think of a webinar as like a virtual lecture hall, a meeting as a virtual meeting room. So for MAPP purposes, for the Alumni Association, which I'm so grateful for providing this platform, it's really helpful because every webinar looks the same. We can make sure we're including more people than would be really allowed and useful in a meeting. And it's a great lesson for me on what are the Zoom capabilities and how to be creative when you feel a little limited by the structures. So I'm basically going to highlight as we're talking today of when things could have been done more intentionally to prioritize connection, but we aren't able to do it in the webinar format. So the thing we're going to really heavily lean on together today is the chat box. So we won't be able to see your faces or hear your voices, but really would love to hear from you. And also just a note, introductions, which we just did via chat box, might not be an ideal way to do it. It's lovely to see people's faces and hear them, but even just getting to read about the other people in the room can just really get us excited to work together. And so if you're working with people and you're working with big groups, Zoom meeting has the capability to put people in breakout rooms. So no matter how many people you have in that meeting, you can be in smaller groups and at least make one connection and a two-way connection. So you might feel connected to me, I hope, because of the things I've shared with you. And I definitely feel connected to each of you as I'm reading through your things. So I'm excited for you to get to do that in other ways. Really important note. So this is huge for me, and I hope that we can definitely internalize it. So I created this, this being the webinar. I also have a workbook that I'll send you because of an overlap in research that I'm familiar with. So social connection research, organizational behavior research, and also facilitation best practices, and a need that I saw was surfacing in my different communities. It is not my intention to push productivity during an international pandemic. So just want to name that what we're doing is specifically addressing creating, building social connection while we're physically distant. It is not going to be the tool to like check off and say, now I've checked in with my people, like their needs are met. There are psychological, emotional, physical things, just results that people are dealing with because of this pandemic. So really encourage you to put those needs at the forefront as you continue to lead and belong to your organizations and communities, because that I think should be the priority right now, but I think this can also be helpful. Nora started time together. What a beautiful face. So our helper of the night is Miss Nora McConnell Johnson. So you'll see her in the chat frequently. So she's currently pursuing a master's in public policy at the University of Chicago. It's been really exciting to hear what she's learning. She's a former elementary school teacher here in New Orleans, where I'm based. And that's how we met, both being elementary educators. And one special skill she has that I personally appreciate as a good friend of hers is she can create a playlist perfect for any occasion. And she's actually going to use that skill with us tonight as we talk about playlists for one another. So as you have questions, send them into the chat box. Also technical difficulties, little tech diff. Nora will help you out. If you know how to message her privately in the chat, that would be the best for a technical difficulty. But if you've never done that before, that's totally fine. You can send it to everyone. Also, I think this webinar, I hope, will feel different from others you've been to, because I mean, a lot of ways, but definitely use that chat box to encourage one another. If you hear something that, like, if you were in a session in person, you'd like give it a couple snaps, or you'd like let the facilitator know. meaningful to you, say that in the chat box. Like, wow, I love this thing, or this is a way that I'm going to use this in my work, because everything you're sharing is going to be helpful to other people as well. Another norm by Nora's face, so it's been looking at you. We can't see you. So hope you're in your jammies. Hope you have like a mug of tea. So you're muted, both video and sound. So don't worry about those things. And yeah, we want as much interaction in the chat box as possible. So ways to implement things, questions that you have, excitement that you have, pushback that you have. If you're like, actually, I think what you're saying isn't going to work for me, and here's why. Great. That's awesome. Put it in the chat box. We can help each other think through those elements. So you're not going to need anything else today. I'm going to encourage you, and I would encourage you as you're holding meetings to have one window open. The only document you have open on your desktop is this screen, this Zoom, my face, my screen share, because it is really helpful to create presence and presence. Though we can't see you right now, it's a good thing to practice, because connection is brought about through presence. That's one of the ways we can bring connection about. Also, the mere presence of your phone, even if it's off, even if it's in your purse, reduces your cognitive capacity, because your brain is thinking about that phone, which I think is just fascinating. So pretty cool. Cool. So here is another section, just benefits of social connection. I'm going to dart through this pretty quickly, because I assume if you're here, you know, or connection seems beneficial for you. I don't think any of these are going to be like, whoa, but I hope that it will just give you some additional just support for the valuing that you clearly already have for social connection. So physical benefits of connection. People care about their health for some reason. The fact that connection with other people manifests within our bodies in terms of our physical health is amazing. So being connected to other people can lower your risk of inflammation, hypertension, obesity. People have higher survival rates when they're socially integrated, strengthen immune systems, extended lifespan, faster recovery from surgery, reduced risk of depression and anxiety. I think especially in the times when we're thinking about our health right now, I think a lot of the things we're thinking about are physical health related, and to recognize that your social life fits into that, I think is really powerful. And also social isolation increases mortality rate. It's associated with poor functioning cardiovascular, immune, endocrine systems. So that's really specific social isolation, when you feel like you don't have a person to reach out to when you're feeling down. And other benefits of social connection. This little hamster is just my favorite. So students who feel connected have been found to feel more motivation for school, even months and years after that measurement was taken. So I know there's a lot of educators in the office, in the whatever we're doing, the Zoom webinar. And so recognize that you connecting with students right now can actually increase their motivation down the road. And so using these strategies, I hope, will help do that. Connections also foster a sense of community. I think this is a really big one for the workplace. It allows people to internalize goals and objectives and feel more committed to them. So as you're planning your meetings, like intentionally planning for connection is actually building support and galvanizing your group to really carry through on the goals that you have. So those were social connection, social integration, and on the negative side, social isolation. Not really saying that we can build each of those in one small interaction, or it really takes a lot of little interactions. So what I'm going to talk about specifically in this work, and I see my advisor for my capstone, Jan Stanley, is in there, so we can thank her for a lot of help and guidance with this, is the idea of short-term positive connections. So there's not always an opportunity to work on that full social integration, but that's okay. Haven't been to the grocery store in a while, but these cats are sure busy at the grocery store. So two elements that wonderful researchers have come up with to talk about these short-term positive connections. One is high-quality connections. That's a researcher named Jane Dutton, who works at a University of Michigan and positivity residence, which is talking about which is Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So we're going to talk about these briefly. So these are basically, the reason why there was cats in a grocery store is my favorite example, and I think the most easily accessible example of high quality connection is when you share a laugh or a joke with someone in the checkout line at a grocery store. And if you notice, when you walk away from that experience, you have more energy and you're just like ready for the rest of your day. there's research behind that, which I think is just like mind-blowing that people have done research, and we're going to talk about what it does for you. So these are specifically connections between two or more people. It's a shared positive experience. You don't have to have known the person beforehand. So these tips can definitely be used in like a big gathering with people who might not even get together again. It can be just a few minutes. And an important part is that the people involved are showing that they care for one another. So that's through presence, through mirroring of body language. So it is really important, particularly when we're virtual, that we're really attentive to that, that we're really showing that eye contact, we're over communicating the fact that we're paying attention and that we care for the person who's sharing with us. Benefits of short-term positive connection. I love these. I think this is one of my favorite parts. I'll probably say that like 6 times before we're done. So short-term positive connections build rapport, they bond people, increase trust. As we mentioned, they establish or reestablish energy. They affirm value and worth and help you build purpose. I think a really cool thing to remember is a lot of these things are with people you don't know. So maybe these things like, oh, right, when I'm connecting with my partner or with a person I really care about, these things feel obvious. This is from those short connections when you're talking to someone waiting in line for coffee. Like, it is so cool, the power of these short connections. And just to call out, one way you could do this if we were in a meeting rather than a webinar is you could ask people, one of the strategies we'll talk about is asking people for information about them before you get started, so that I could say, I know that actually out of the however many people are in this room, there's 20 Leos. And Leos always, astrological signs of Leos always want to help out. And always want to just do the work. And so I could say, I need a Leo to read this slide. And it is just so fun to do that. More benefits, I think these are the most work-related benefits, so I tried to kind of categorize those together. Short-term positive connections allow people to conceptualize their time and concentration differently. They make people feel like they have more time to focus to work, make people more resourceful, they increase ability to cooperate and coordinate, encourage open conversations until an answer is reached. That's, problem solving 101, and associated with higher psychological safety, which is important for learning. Another thing I could do is ahead of time, I could ask specific people to read slides, and that is something that can allow people to feel connected. So would love if y'all can head to the chat box and just say, I've seen a couple things going through, just what feels exciting to you about this research? What resonated with you? And I know Nora noted and someone asked, I will definitely share these slides with you. I also have, I think, a 15-page workbook that you can work through all of the suggestions on your own while you're planning a meeting. So I'd love to hear just like what is exciting to you. And you can go ahead and share those in the box, the chat box. Yeah, love the shout out to 4.0 alumni. Yes, Jess, definitely a workbook. I love workbooks. Yes, Lucy, talking to strangers is important. You're helping other people. Grocery store, absolutely. Peta, I love the grocery store. That's been one of the things I've missed the most. Implementing information, awesome. Yeah, love that it can happen with strangers. Cool, so definitely keep throwing those in there. Favorite show shout out, cool. Love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So great, we know these benefits, but like, how do we use them, right? Like what do we do to put this research into action? That is what we're gonna talk about. So research-based connections, similar to before, I'm gonna be talking at you. You're gonna be using the chat box, and we're using the chat box because it's the easiest thing and we have a short amount of time. You could also use a shared Google Doc. You could use a Google Jamboard, which I actually just used for the first time yesterday for a MAPP alum meeting with Kelly, and I loved it, one of my colleagues. You could use a Google Sheet, really anything. So the information, just so you know, is organized in a workbook. So we are actually only going to cover 2 of the 6 suggestions, but you'll get to read each of them, risks, benefits, ways to mitigate risks, and research that's associated with each of them. And just so you know, this is really supposed to be framing the work that you're doing. So this isn't going to be like, okay, here's an extra thing I have to tack on. It's hopefully just going to be, here's a framework I can use to do the things I'm already doing, but allow people to feel closer together, because I think that's something that is always important. As you can tell from that research, it's not related to our physical distancing, but now that we are, the way that we're showing love for our communities is by staying physically apart. I think it's just even more important than ever. Cool. So 6 different categories of suggestions. We're going to talk about 2 of them. So overall, the suggestions are just how can you incorporate interaction, variety of interaction and modality, create opportunities for participants to help one another, collect information and use it strategically to increase belonging. We're going to talk about that one. It's one of my faves. Have norms around presence and respectful listening, create structures for participants to share information and gratitude. And make your work playful. That's the other one we're going to talk about because obviously play is very important to me. Beep, beep, beep. Yep. Okay. So collecting information and using it strategically. So one of my favorite things I read about when researching social connection is the concept of mere belonging, and recognizing that incidental similarities that people find between them and a stranger can increase their compliance, cooperation, and connection. It can actually change your physiological reaction. In the study that I love thinking about, there's 2 people in one study. They're told they share some odd piece of information, like the same birthday. One of them, there's a window, so this person can see this person running on the treadmill. The person who's watching, their heart rate increases because they already feel a connection to that other person. And I just think that's so exciting, and figuring out how to use that in our work is so just energizing to me. So even when group membership is arbitrary, people feel belonging. Anyone out there, I know there's a lot of camp folks who are in the room, both Camp Kesem, Live Oak Wilderness Camp, probably some other camps. Color Wars teams, like I am green team for life. Was it random that I was assigned to the green team? Absolutely. Am I so proud of it? Yes. And so you can bring those things into work. See, there's some folks there, blue team. We have some YMCA camp, yep, with Lindsay. So things that I like to collect: astrological sign. If you don't know signs, that's totally fine. Ask for birthdays and you can plug in a formula and figure out their sign. Favorite dog breed, favorite sandwich, insect, color, birthday, zoo animal, scary movie. I do a lot of work with the University of Virginia, shout out young alumni. We talk about what dorm we were in because that was arbitrary, but people feel a lot of nostalgia. Also a great question: if you could be a blank, what would you be? And so one of my favorites that I learned from colleagues, Marla Barrera and Rachel Van Paris, asked our fellows this year, if you were a rom-com, what rom-com are you? Which is just like, what, who asked that? But being able to tell people they have that in common is the most energizing thing. And so when you start getting into things like that, it might be helpful to create grouping options in your survey, because probably not a lot of people are going to pick the same rom-com. But if you give them options, then you can more easily group them. Great, see some awesome things going in the chat. Honestly, I love the connection that's happening. So 2 ways you can use that. You can include the similarities on guiding documents, even if it honestly has nothing to do with what you're working on. You could say, fun fact of the day, 75% of our team is like favorite dog breed is a lab, or their favorite sandwich from this local shop is this. And it just gives people something they know that they can count on to talk to that person about at some point. And so one risk, some people might not want their information shared. So make sure when you're asking people for information, you say how you're going to use it and let them opt in. Because some folks might say, yeah, you can have my sign. That's a publicly available piece of information, but I don't really want to tell you X, Y, Z. And we want to respect that consent forever. Put people into breakout rooms based on commonalities. You could do that and say, okay, I've put these people in this breakout room because they all love the turkey tom from Jimmy John's. Or you could put people in breakout rooms and say, figure out why you're all in this breakout room. Here's a category. Or maybe don't give them the category. And so some people might be distracted because they want to talk about that. Easy way to mitigate that: build in time in your schedule for people to talk about how funny it is that they're in a room with other people who love commonality, who love turkey tom, right? Don't make them feel like they have to like stifle that. Give them the space to connect over that shared piece. So quickly head to that chat box and let us know, how might you incorporate some of these suggestions? Do you have anything brewing in your mind right now? Just like, ooh, I could use this in a meeting that's coming up, or I know someone who would like this, or is there something that you have a question about? Like, I'm not sure how to use this. This doesn't really feel like it applies to me. Or just, yeah, anything that resonates with you. So I'm gonna read a couple of those and we're gonna keep going because I built in way too many things to talk about in 30 minutes. A fun survey I could give my teammates to use later. Absolutely, Maggie. I think that that is awesome. A trivia night, good way to create teams. Yeah, this doesn't have to be work related. We need connection in all areas of our lives. Lightening the mood, yes. Bringing up things that you have in common, it gets really playful. Use this with support groups, absolutely. When we think about our work as more expansive than our traditional like 9 to 5, like what other groups are you involved in that might benefit from doing these things? Next thing we're going to talk about quickly is making your work playful. So playfulness, when it's introduced into the workplace, has research-backed reasons and benefits, which I think is great because it's usually not hard to tell people that it's fun, but sometimes it is a sell. So playfulness allows people to get to know each other in a different context. When you're being playful and when you set rules and parameters to when it is time to be playful, it allows people to separate themselves from the power dynamics of a work team. It reduces stress, it's breaking your routine, and it's enabling people to connect with one another. It makes people less self-conscious, more comfortable taking risks, which is something that is necessary for learning, particularly necessary for group learning, because people need to be willing to make public mistakes in order for the group to learn together. That's part of psychological safety. So play cues specifically, they imply the permission people need to be comfortable. Like hopefully happened with you and seeing GIFs or coming into the webinar and hearing Stevie Wonder. They are shown when play cues are left out in a workplace, have been shown to increase the creative climate, playfulness, and productivity. So if there's anything you need to sell folks on, productivity is usually pretty important to the workplace, and letting them know that being playful can make you more likely to be productive is probably pretty good stuff. So the 5 suggestions here are create playlists, display playful stimuli, so those are those play cues, use themes, creative grouping, and find your playfulness style. So I'm going to try to do this quickly. Before a meeting, one thing that I think is really fun and we do at my workplace is asking people, what's your favorite pump up song or a song that brings you joy? And what's a song you like to work to? And then being able to use those during the meeting, because our virtual meetings nowadays, there's some work time built in, right? And you can play that song. And when someone hears a song that they suggested, they're automatically so excited and they feel connected to the work and they feel connected to the people who are running the work. Great, and so quickly, I'm not gonna read any of these songs right now, but I want you to head to the chat box and drop the name and artist, if possible, of a song that makes you feel joy. And I'm gonna create a playlist and share it with you so that as we're working remotely, we can feel connected to one another, and connected specifically through joy. It's making me really excited to see all of these songs. It's gonna be hard not to read them. And I'll also make that playlist collaborative so that you can continue to add to it if you would like to, if you have a Spotify. We talked about playful stimuli. Examples of those: sodas, snacks, candy, Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, bubbles, love bubbles, cards, games, stickers. There's a few folks in the room right now who did they presented research on this, and they had us all wear mustaches in the class. And I still remember, I know Courtney Daly's in here, I still remember how much fun we had just like putting on mustaches and looking at each other. And you can do this as a break or just full time. One thing that you might be thinking is we live virtually now, right? Like how do we have playful things available for people? So being physically distant does make it harder. If you look at the bottom of this slide, you can mail things to people, you can deliver them. If you're local, definitely think about cleanliness, like prioritize things being clean. But think about how delightful it would be to just be like, get something from your team on your doorstep that you then get to be playful with in a meeting. Oh, and I love this idea of getting people to craft their own mustaches. That is such a great idea. Because that means you're not even having to deliver things to people. You could say when the meeting starts, like, let's take 5 minutes, grab a piece of paper, craft your own mustache, put it on your face. And the other risk that some people would spot is that participants might be distracted. Again, you want to allow time for people to play. So just build it in, and then it doesn't feel like it's distracting. And if there's a lot of really distracting things, maybe do it during breaks. Theme meetings. So this can be really any theme you can think of. Think about ways people can get involved with the meeting. So this is basically, you're not changing any of the content of the meeting, you're changing the color of your slides, you're making the titles of each section of your presentation have silly names. One of my favorites that one of my teammates does is a pregame. And she'll talk about doing, silly hat meetings. I love that. So we'll have a meeting that is themed around like, we're getting ready for the big game. And so it's a huddle and there's basketballs out and there's Gatorade bottles and we're talking about, you know, what's going to happen. It could be something like local celebrities, movie themed, really just, you're not changing the content, you're changing how you're delivering it. And think about things people can get involved with from their house. I love this idea of a silly hat meeting. That's awesome. Just that playful thing that you're doing can really set a different tone for the work that you're doing together. Creative grouping, we've talked about this a little bit, just naming that you don't have to have information ahead of time to group people that way. You could name, you're gonna go to this breakout room if you really love Stevie Wonder, and you're gonna have to choose. Do you love Stevie Wonder or do you love James Brown? Saw someone suggested James Brown. Or do you love Michael Jackson? Theme from Free Willy. Amazing suggestion. And so just giving people that silly chance to connect and say, oh, I have to pick which one of these things. And one of the risks, I love that song from Free Willy too. One of the risks of this is people might not see, this is a risk of all playfulness ideas, people might not see the added benefits. Here's the cool thing. You are going to have in your back pocket the research. I've also linked each of the actual studies of where the research comes from. So you can say, actually, you know, like, we're about to do this new thing and this doesn't really fit with how we usually work as a team, but here's reasons that playfulness or connection have been shown to really boost workplace productivity or creativity or connection with one another. And people might gravitate to a few groups over others. So if you think about ahead of time, if you need a certain amount of people, you can make limits for breakout rooms so that that's not something you need to worry about. Last thing is just find your playfulness style. Honestly, that could be said about all of this. Find your connection style. Is it your delivery? Is it your perfect jokes, you know, that you're giving? Is it your GIFs? What we really want you to do is think about authenticity. Authenticity is really important because if you're just like forcing something or like trying to be really playful when it doesn't feel like it's within your personality style, you could encourage someone else, you could empower someone else on your team to own the playfulness part of your meeting because it's really important for it to feel authentic to you. Great. So yeah, you're not changing the work, you're changing the frameworks that it lives within. So again, chat box. Oh man, we even have some great Australian bands to listen to. This is such a fun international gathering. So head to the chat box and write, how might you incorporate playfulness into a meeting that you have coming up? Or what is this making you think of? A lot of you have already done, have already put things in the chat box of like, oh, I've seen people do this before. Now I know it's aligned to your research. Now I can tell people about like, this is a thing that research says is great. Or just what is your favorite way to be playful? Kelly, that is such a compliment because camp is how I think the whole world should work. And so being able to put research behind why I think that has been really a joy. So go ahead and add those things and we are, oh wow, overtime, cool. Thanks for sticking around. Ooh, I love the idea of sneaking in funny polls. Just to let y'all know, typically when I do this in person or in a Zoom meeting that has breakout capabilities, I don't go through the suggestions myself. I let people read through them, discuss how they would use them, and then we come back together and do kind of a jigsaw method of people sharing out. But that wasn't a great format for today, so, and that's okay. Closing. We're done. Makes me sad. We're not actually done. Would love everyone to think about just a commitment. What is something that we talked about in the last 35 minutes that you can put into action in the next week? And definitely it doesn't have to be something I said. It doesn't have to be something you saw on a slide. It could be something you saw in the chat box because we're all just working humans who are excited about connecting with one another. So take a second, think about what that commitment might be. Try to be as specific as possible. Love that. Increase playfulness. Give you a couple more seconds to think about your commitment. If you're not able to put it in the chat box, I challenge you to just think about it before you go to sleep tonight. Even if it's just like as your head's hitting the pillow, what could I do to use this? Or if you want to wait until you get all of these resources in your email and then make your commitment then. Amazing. Silly Hat meeting is coming for Jess. Awesome. Adding more GIFs. Yeah, forever. Jiffy, great resource. I'll include that in the follow-up email. Perfect. So gratitude, was going to ask everyone to share some gratitude. I think if that's something that speaks to you, definitely write some gratitude to something that you learned, something that you're grateful for, because that's just a great thing to do. But I also want to be conscious of everyone's time. So what we're going to do, yes, I love themed meetings, internalizing practices, working with children, love it. Wow, this is so exciting. Ooh, yeah, no distractions. Andrew, you'll enjoy reading the examples that are in the workbook of how to tell people about that, and also what are norms of presence and how do you explore it with people so that it feels natural and not like something that is just being forced upon them. Feedback. Oh, Ashley Graham is my queen. If anyone knows her, let me know. So I am going to follow up, as I said, with the workbook. I'll follow up with our playlist. I'll follow up with the things you shared in the chat box. And I will also follow up with a survey. Would really appreciate you completing that survey because it will help me improve my practice. And thank you. And so that is it for the content. We almost got through it in time, which is exciting, but would love to answer any questions. So Nora, if you've noticed any questions that haven't been answered, definitely let me know. And now is the time, y'all, to just hit up that chat box with any questions you have. Oh, appreciate all of this encouragement. This is wonderful. Yeah, but feel free to stay on the line and either express gratitude through the chat box, ask questions. And if you have anyone that you think would appreciate this, I'm going to ask you if you can just send me their information, or if you want to put it in the chat box here. It'll really help me to know like who's in the world that I'm interacting with. Or if you forward it to someone, if you can just like let me know, that will really mean a lot to me. Oh, mood booster, that's so kind. Different themes people have used for slide decks. Lindsay, such a good question. And also we'll stay on the line for until probably 7:45. So feel free to hang. And so, yeah, different themes. One of my favorite meetings was circus themed. I made caramel apples, which is something I will never do again. And so in these times might be a little bit harder because you have to deliver them, but I'm actually about to deliver some brownies to a friend, so not impossible. Other themes, I think movies are fun because anything that has GIFs associated with it, I'll also include that in the follow-up email, just like how to use GIFs, what does it look like? Because if you can theme those, it's really fun. I've seen Mean Girls themed, Clueless themed, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, anybody else have questions? Oh, Britney Spears themed, absolutely. Tiger King themed, anything that like people are talking about right now. Didn't land with your Gen Z audience the way you wanted. That is so funny, Jess, that you tried it with people and they were like, Britney Spears. Hey, trying is, I'm sure they could appreciate the playfulness, even if they didn't fully understand the love that we have for that woman. A color, yeah, absolutely. For people who aren't into themes, it's easy sometimes to think about what's happening in the world. So if there's NFL happening, or if there's any type of sports is an easy thing to latch onto. Oscars, Grammys, a challenge across building, yeah, connection across technology. I think one big thing is you want people to use their video, turn their video on, which is not something we did here, but it creates so much more connection and trust. Nora, are there any questions that I didn't see here? Protecting time at the beginning of the meeting for connecting. Absolutely, Maggie, thank you for that. And I think also, yeah, especially in the time that we're in right now, just creating that space for people to be and feel human and feel heard. I think that's really helpful. Encouraging virtual backgrounds. Yeah, oh, I love that. So people aren't revealing more than they want to in their environments, share houses. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I was trying to think about a cool way to make it look like I'm somewhere other than my kitchen, and all I could think of was moving my plant closer. But then it looked very odd to just have one plant, so I ended up abandoning that idea. Between two ferns, absolutely. Snap camera where you can use Snapchat filters on Zoom. Awesome. Love that. That's so fun. Would love to just like be on a beach. Ooh, that is a great question. Are we actually building greater connections because we can see people's homes? Yeah, that is a step in vulnerability. I feel very close to a lot of the people I work with. I work on a small team, but I've only been inside a couple of their houses, but I now know a lot about what their houses look like. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Danny's referencing that video that I think went viral of a woman not realizing her camera and sound were still on when she went to the restroom. Yeah, getting to see kids and pets. I had a meeting today where one of my coworkers had his son and he just learned how to hug. And so he was hugging and it was just the cutest thing I've ever seen. Taking calls from kids' bedrooms and bathrooms. Absolutely. Humanizing is, I mean, we're all just humans. And I think that's maybe one benefit of what we're doing right now. Oh my gosh, Lindsay, this is the cutest thing I've ever heard. Doing a crib style tour of your house. That is so fun. Like this is where the magic happens. Yeah, that's a great point. Some business contexts will deny video because they're not set up in a way that feels comfortable for them. I think that's a really great point. People have different levels of professional comfort. I clearly have a lot of comfort in stretching the boundaries, but we also don't want to push people too far outside of what feels good for them. Amazing. Sharing potty training. I love it. Oh, it sounds like a couple people are doing some crib style tours. That is so cool. I love this. That I can't wait to read through all of these ideas because I didn't get to see all of them as I was talking, but this is really great. Ooh, a crib style tour. What a great question. So the show MTV, no, the network MTV used to have a show called Cribs where they took people through tours of celebrities' houses. And so celebrities would say, hey, welcome, like I'm gonna take you on a tour. And it was always like very dramatic, like this is my kitchen. And they show you that their refrigerators were always spotless and they have like all these different kinds of things. And so being able to like take people through your house and show them things. Oh, wow, there's a 24-hour Cribs channel on Pluto. Amazing. Yes, I think I can download the chat. Absolutely. I love that, Corinne, thinking about what is the choice we want to give. And not everyone has a space they're proud to share. Thank you so much for bringing that into this conversation and bringing that into the space. I think it's really important to recognize that you do want to give optionality and also check in with folks because there's probably, yeah, a reason that they're feeling different ways and other ways you can support them in feeling connected. And that they're also involved in what's happening, or giving different options. Like you might not want to do a tour of your house. You might want to show us what you're eating. You might want to show us a pet. You might want to just like tell us about what you've been reading or thinking about. Giving people an option there is really important. Awesome. Well, it is about that time, y'all. So I will be sure to download the chat and expect an email before before the end of the week with some suggestions, both from me, from the people who joined us today. Thank you so much. If I don't already have your email, definitely send it in the chat privately to Nora. And having video chat on is inequitable because it's about student lives. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely about being optional. I think there's also a different level of awareness and intention that has to do with dealing with students and dealing with people under 18 or 18 and under, because there is definitely elements of permission and of ensuring you're working through parents. So a lot of these suggestions were made with adults in mind, but I think can be easily translated to working with younger folks. And I think having these reminders to make sure we're recognizing the privilege. I think also the privilege of just being able to work remotely. And that is a huge privilege. Wonderful. Thanks, y'all.